I planned a family picnic, but they left me out to play with my cousin. So, I packed the food and left a note. Their angry voicemails were hilarious. So there I was, spending my entire Saturday morning running around like a maniac trying to put together the perfect family picnic. I'm talking 3 trips to Target for supplies, another stop at Whole Foods for the fancy cheese platter Mom specifically requested, and don't even get me started on the 2 hours I spent assembling those Pinterest-worthy fruit kebabs that nobody would probably even eat. The whole thing started because my aunt kept complaining at Easter about how our family never gets together anymore. You know how it is. Everyone's busy with their own lives, kids have soccer practice, work's crazy, the usual excuses. So naturally, guess who volunteered to organize something? Yours truly, because apparently I'm the family's unofficial event coordinator now, which is hilarious considering I can barely coordinate my own sock drawer half the time. I reserved the pavilion at Riverside Park, the nice one with the grills and picnic tables, not the sketchy one by the highway. Cost me $60, but whatever, family's worth it, right? Then I went all out with the planning, made a whole spreadsheet and everything, color-coded by food categories and who was bringing what, sent it to everyone in a group text with way too many exclamation points trying to get people hyped. The response was pretty typical. Mom said she'd bring her famous potato salad, but forgot to mention she was also inviting my cousin Sophie, who I hadn't seen in like 2 years. Dad said he'd handle drinks, which meant he'd show up with a cooler full of Bud Light and call it a day. My Uncle Tom promised to bring his cornhole set, and Aunt Linda said she'd make her 7-layer dip that's really just beans and sour cream with some cheese on top. Saturday morning rolled around, and I was up at 7 loading my Honda, with enough food to feed a small army. Sandwiches, chips, the fruit kebabs that took forever, homemade cookies, paper plates, plastic forks, napkins, wet wipes, sunscreen, bug spray, a first aid kit because you never know, and 3 different games I'd bought specifically for this occasion. I even brought my portable speaker and made a playlist of everyone's favorite songs from the family group chat where we all shared our top 5. The drive to the park was pretty chill. Windows down, music up, feeling good about bringing everyone together. I got there early to set everything up, arranged the food on the tables, hung up some streamers I'd grabbed from the dollar store, got the games ready. It looked pretty decent, if I do say so myself. Update. Just wanted to give you all a heads up that this story gets pretty wild from here. Ever had one of those moments where you realize your family might not actually see you the way you see yourself? Well, buckle up because I'm about to tell you exactly how I found out where I really stand in the pecking order. The question is, have you ever walked away from people who were supposed to love you? Everyone started trickling in around noon, and at first things seemed normal. Hugs all around, compliments on the setup, the usual small talk about work and weather. Then Sophie showed up, and I swear it was like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly, she was the center of attention, getting welcomed like she was some kind of celebrity returning from a world tour instead of just my cousin who moved to Denver 2 years ago for a marketing job. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Sophie. We used to be pretty close growing up, but she's always been the golden child of the family. Star athlete in high school, got a full ride to state, graduated with honors, landed a great job right out of college. Meanwhile, I'm over here working at an insurance office and living in the same apartment I've had since I was 25. Not exactly the success story everyone loves to brag about at holiday dinners. But this day, something felt different. Maybe it was because I'd put so much effort into making everything perfect. Or maybe I was just finally seeing things clearly for the first time. Either way, what happened next really opened my eyes. We started eating, and everyone was complimenting the food. I was feeling pretty good about myself until Sophie mentioned she'd just gotten back from a weekend hiking trip in the Rockies. Suddenly, that's all anyone wanted to talk about. How amazing Colorado is, how brave she is for going solo, how great she looks. Apparently, mountain air does wonders for your complexion. I tried to jump into the conversation a few times, mentioning how I'd been thinking about taking a trip myself, maybe somewhere on the East Coast since I'd never been to Maine. But every time I started talking, someone would interrupt with another question for Sophie about her adventures. It was like I was invisible. After lunch, I suggested we play some of the games I'd brought. I'd gotten this really cool outdoor Jenga set, some frisbees, and even found this awesome water balloon launcher that looked super fun. But Uncle Tom was already setting up his cornhole boards, and guess who volunteered to be his partner? Yep, Sophie. The thing about Sophie is she's genuinely good at everything. Always has been. Give her any sport, any game, any challenge, and she'll figure it out in like 5 minutes and probably beat everyone else. So of course she was nailing every single cornhole toss while everyone cheered like she'd just won the Olympics. I stood there holding my water balloon launcher, watching my entire family lose their minds over my cousin's ability to throw a beanbag into a hole. When I suggested we try something else, maybe something everyone could play together, my dad actually shushed me because Sophie was lining up for what he called the shot of the century. It was a decent throw, I'll admit, but the way everyone reacted, you'd think she just cured cancer or something. High fives all around, someone even took a video to post on Facebook later. Meanwhile, I'm still standing there with my games, feeling like the kid nobody wants to pick for their team. This is when I started having flashbacks to pretty much every family gathering we'd ever had. Sophie winning the Easter egg hunt every year until she was like 16. Sophie getting the biggest slice of birthday cake because she'd helped Grandma in the kitchen for 10 minutes. Sophie, Sophie, Sophie. And me just kind of existing in the background, making sure everyone had enough food and the trash got emptied. The worst part was how everyone always talked about us. Sophie was the athletic one, the smart one, the ambitious one. I was the responsible one, which is basically family code for boring but useful. Like being responsible is some kind of consolation prize for not being interesting enough to get a real personality trait. Update. Okay, folks, this is where things get interesting. I'm about to make a decision that's going to change everything. And honestly, I'm still not sure if it was the right call or if I totally overreacted. But sometimes you just hit a breaking point, you know? The question is, when someone shows you who they really are, do you believe them the first time, or do you keep giving them chances to prove you wrong? So there I am, watching my family play cornhole and act like Sophie just invented the game, when something inside me just snapped. Not in an angry way, more like a clarity thing. Like suddenly I could see the situation for what it really was. I looked around at all the food I'd prepared, the decorations I'd hung up, the games I'd bought that nobody wanted to play, and I realized something pretty important. I wasn't actually part of this family gathering. I was the staff. I was the person who made it all happen so everyone else could have fun and ignore me. It wasn't even about Sophie, really. She was just being herself, and honestly, good for her. She didn't ask everyone to worship the ground she walked on. That was all them. The problem was that I'd been so busy trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect niece, the perfect cousin, that I'd forgotten to actually be a person worth including. So I made a decision that probably sounds crazy but felt completely right in the moment. I started quietly packing up my stuff. First the games nobody wanted to play, then my portable speaker that was still playing the playlist I'd made special for today. I wrapped up the leftover sandwiches and put the cookies back in their container, packed up the fruit kebabs that were still basically untouched because everyone was too busy watching Sophie dominate cornhole to eat. The best part was that nobody even noticed. They were all too focused on the ongoing tournament to see me methodically, dismantling the entire picnic I'd spent days planning. It was like watching a magic trick in reverse, making everything disappear while everyone was distracted by the shiny object. I saved the food for last, the stuff everyone had actually been eating. The potato salad Mom brought, Uncle Tom's store-bought, cookies he'd claimed were homemade, Aunt Linda's famous 7-layer dip. I packed it all up nice and neat, leaving just enough for one person to have a decent meal. Sophie could have the rest since she was apparently the only one who mattered anyway. Then I sat down at the picnic table and wrote out a note on the back of one of my unused paper plates. Nothing dramatic, just something simple and to the point. Since I'm not needed here, figured you wouldn't need my picnic either. Hope you all have fun. The pavilion rental is paid until 6. I left the note right in the middle of the table, where someone would definitely see it, grabbed my keys, and walked back to my car. The whole thing probably took me 20 minutes, and not one person asked where I was going or offered to help. They were too busy cheering for Sophie's latest cornhole victory. The drive home was weird. Part of me felt guilty, like maybe I was being overdramatic or selfish. But mostly I felt relieved, like I'd finally stopped pretending everything was fine when it really wasn't. I didn't go home, though. Instead, I drove to the little park by my apartment complex, the one with the pond and the walking trail. I grabbed the book I'd been trying to finish for like 3 months out of my glove compartment, found a nice spot under a tree, and settled in for a peaceful afternoon. It was actually perfect. No drama, no pressure to be anything other than exactly who I was. Just me, my book, and the sound of ducks doing their thing on the pond. I'd forgotten how much I actually enjoyed my own company when I wasn't constantly worrying about making everyone else happy. My phone started buzzing around 4 o'clock, but I'd already decided to keep it on silent. Whatever family crisis was brewing could wait. This was my time now. Update. All right, everyone, here's where the story gets really good. You know how they say people's true colors come out when they're inconvenienced? Well, my family definitely proved that theory right. The voicemails and texts I got over the next few days were absolutely unhinged, and honestly, pretty entertaining. But here's the million-dollar question. When people show you they only value you for what you do for them, not who you are, what do you do with that information? When I finally checked my phone that evening, I had 17 missed calls and about 30 text messages. The voicemails were honestly hilarious, in a tragic kind of way. Mom was the first to figure out what happened, and her message started with, "Honey, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is really selfish behavior." Selfish? That was rich coming from someone who hadn't even noticed I was gone until the food disappeared. Dad's voicemail was shorter, but somehow more insulting. "Your mother's upset, and frankly, so am I. You ruined a perfectly good family day over nothing. Call us back so we can figure out how to fix this. Fix this." Like I was a broken appliance that needed repair instead of a person who'd had enough of being taken for granted. But the real winner was Aunt Linda's message. She was clearly mad and not trying to hide it. "I cannot believe you would abandon your family like this. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was when people started asking where all the food went?" Sophie was mortified, and frankly, I don't blame her. Of course Sophie was mortified. Not because she felt bad about how I'd been treated, but because my absence had somehow made her the center of a different kind of attention than she was used to. The text messages were even better. Uncle Tom sent me a novel about family loyalty and how I'd let everyone down. Aunt Linda kept sending me pictures of Sophie looking sad, like I was supposed to feel guilty for ruining her perfect day. But the absolute best was the group message. They started without me, screenshots of which my cousin Jake sent me because he thought the whole thing was ridiculous. They were literally discussing how to handle me, like I was some kind of problem child who'd had a tantrum instead of an adult who'd made a conscious decision. Sophie herself didn't reach out for 2 days, which told me everything I needed to know. When she finally did, it was this long text about how she never meant to make me feel left out, and how she had no idea I was upset. The whole message was basically her explaining why none of this was her fault, which honestly made it even more clear that she really didn't get it. My response was pretty simple. I told everyone that I was done being the family event coordinator. No more organizing holiday gatherings, no more planning birthday parties, no more being the one who remembers everyone's anniversary and sends cards. If they wanted family time, they could figure it out themselves. The response to that was predictably dramatic. Mom called me crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. Dad threatened to have a serious conversation with me about my attitude problem. Aunt Linda actually had the audacity to suggest I was jealous of Sophie and needed to work on myself. Jealous of someone who needed constant validation from a bunch of people who only cared about her because she was good at throwing bags and hiking mountains. Sure, Linda, that's exactly what this was about. The thing that really got me was how none of them seemed to understand that I wasn't asking for much. I didn't need to be the star of the show like Sophie. I just wanted to be included in the show I'd literally created and funded myself. But their reaction told me everything I needed to know about how they really saw me. I wasn't family to them. I was the help, the person who made their good times possible but wasn't actually supposed to participate in them. So I made another decision. I blocked most of them on social media, stopped responding to the group chat, and told my parents I needed some space to think about things. Not forever, just until I figured out what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted to have with people who clearly didn't respect me. The weeks that followed were honestly pretty great. Without all the family drama and obligations, I had so much free time. I started going to yoga classes, joined a book club at the local library, even signed up for a pottery class I'd been wanting to try for years. I also started hanging out more with my coworkers and making actual friends instead of just being the reliable family member who showed up when needed. Turns out when you're not constantly stressed about managing other people's emotions and expectations, you're actually pretty fun to be around. The best part was watching the family dynamics implode without me there to hold everything together. Mom called me crying because nobody wanted to host Thanksgiving. Dad was frustrated because no one had organized anything for his birthday. Uncle Tom was mad because the family group chat had died and nobody was planning the annual camping trip. Sophie, from what I heard through Jake, was starting to realize that being the center of attention wasn't as fun when it came with actual responsibility. Apparently, she'd volunteered to plan a 4th of July barbecue and completely forgot about it until the day before, leaving everyone scrambling to figure out food and location. It was almost sad, watching them all realize how much work I'd been doing behind the scenes to keep their perfect family image intact. Almost. The turning point came about 2 months later when Jake invited me to his birthday party. Just a small thing at his apartment with some friends, nothing fancy. But it was the first family event I'd been to since the picnic disaster, and honestly, I was nervous. I shouldn't have been worried, though. Jake's friends were great, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I was actually part of the group, instead of just the person making sure everyone else had a good time. We played games, had actual conversations, laughed until my stomach hurt. It was what family gatherings should have been all along. The contrast was pretty stark when Mom called the next day to complain about how divided the family had become and how much she missed the way things used to be. The way things used to be meant me doing all the work while everyone else got all the credit. Thanks, but no thanks. I told her I was happy to have a relationship with family members who actually valued me as a person, not just as their personal event planner. If she wanted to rebuild our relationship, it had to be based on mutual respect, not just expectation that I'd go back to my old role. Some of them got it eventually. Dad apologized for not noticing how much work I'd been doing and how little appreciation I'd been getting. Jake and I got closer than we'd ever been. Even Mom came around after a few months, though she still occasionally hints that I should just forgive and forget about the whole thing. But the others? Aunt Linda still sends me passive-aggressive Facebook messages about family values. Uncle Tom acts like I'm the one who owes him an apology. And Sophie? She's apparently still confused about why I overreacted to what she considers a misunderstanding. The funny thing is, they're all still expecting me to come back eventually. Like, this is just a phase I'm going through, and eventually I'll realize the error of my ways and go back to being their unpaid party planner. But here's what I've learned over the past year. My worth isn't determined by how useful I am to other people. I don't have to earn my place in relationships by constantly proving my value through service. And I definitely don't have to accept being treated like background noise just because we share DNA. These days, I spend my time with people who actually want me around for who I am, not what I can do for them. I've got a great group of friends from yoga class. My book club has become like a second family, and I'm even dating someone I met in pottery class who thinks I'm interesting just because I exist. The best part is that I don't miss the old family dynamics at all. I thought I would, but turns out I was mourning something that was never really there in the first place. What I thought was family love was actually just family convenience. I still talk to the family members who figured out how to treat me with respect. But the ones who didn't? They're welcome to keep playing cornhole and pretending Sophie invented the game. I've got better things to do with my Saturday afternoons. And you know what? I'm actually grateful for that picnic disaster. It showed me exactly where I stood with people I'd been trying to please my whole life. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is finding out the truth about your relationships, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because now, I know the difference between people who love you and people who just love what you do for them. And that knowledge? That's worth way more than all the family approval I used to think I needed. So thanks, Sophie, for being so amazing at cornhole that day. You accidentally helped me realize I deserved better than being invisible at my own party. And thanks to everyone else for showing me that walking away was the healthiest thing I could have done. These days, when people ask me about family drama, I just tell them the truth. Some people are family because of blood, and some people are family because of choice. The ones worth keeping are the ones who choose you back.